Alright, we're taking the light bar apart tonight, and I'm going to start swapping out the stock LEDs for niches. This should be really boring. So I'm going to be doing the preliminary taking apart and then the separation of the actual individual boards. I'll reflow those off screen and have some new ones for everybody else to look at when I'm done. Alright, here we are. All these bolts loosened up, including all the end caps. Nothing more. We'll take off this end cap. Get this end cap as loose as we can. Now you'll see there's a plexiglass cover that needs to be pulled out and set aside. Take care of that. You don't want to scratch that up or anything. There's a little rubber gasket that wants to go with that. There's another one on this side that hasn't come out, but we're going to pull that out anyway. All those screws loose. Now it's time to start disassembling the reflector screws. Alright, so all those screws are removed. Take the reflectors out. There are two panels, 1 and 2. We'll have to take those apart. And here we are, beer nuts to nuts, with a set of screws to pull out the LED panel. No. Setting these aside over here. Oh, this. Oh, she's a bitch. There we go. Those. For those that don't understand, that's two screws. And she's gonna be a twat. Okay. I have tools for this. Oh, she's gonna be a jib. For those non-dyslexics, that's a bitch. Un momento. After a little persuasion, final bolt has come loose. Alright, So we're clearly looking at 1 and 2 panels, both of which just slide right out just like that. Aluminum housing, mediocre heat sinking to say the least, but we'll improve on that in a few. More importantly, the dismantling of these panels. Wow, I'm looking at these 2 wires right here, and those are thin. Where's my micrometer? Get an accurate measurement here. One millimeter. Yeah. I really don't think that's gonna cut it. At least not for what we're gonna do. That's gonna be a lot of reflowing. Come on, there we go. Clean up our iron. Grab our solder sucker here. We're just going to work with this first pad set first. This is 1 segment. And those are nice and clean. Alright. Now comes the really fun part. Removal of the LEDs themselves. We're going to remove all the LEDs from both boards, and then we will install the new ones. Very, very small flame. And I always have grip of the LED before I even start this process. The last thing you want is to cook this board, because you're not replacing it easily or cheaply. Getting the hot cone right at the point of the LED. Push that heat into the solder joint. There we go. Hopefully the rest of these come off just as quick and easy. Another. Notice as soon as the LED comes off, I move down to the next one. You don't want to sustain that heat anywhere near the chip for long, if you can help it. Unfortunately, this process of removing the chips is going to require the same process to reapply the new chips, which sucks, because this is not the best way to go about reflowing chips, but it is very effective. Wow, these guys are coming right off now. Finally got enough heat pushed into that heat sink. Got this big inductor right here that's sinking a lot of heat, but things seem to be going very smoothly. It's always a plus. Again, as soon as the chip lets go, move your heat. Get it off that spot. And if you can, keep your heat moving around a little around the area. Don't concentrate it in one spot. Ooh, another dedome. That's okay. Again, we'll save as many of these as we can, but I personally have no use for them. Somebody out there might, and I will happily sell them as previously flowed LEDs. Again, once you start to get towards the outside edge, things will get a little easier, a little faster. There we go. I'm going to continue the same process on this board. I'm not going to film all of that because obviously that's really boring. Alright, so off camera, I cleaned all the pads off, reflowed them with a little bit of lead solder, cleaned them, and then I fluxed them with a Kester 186 liquid flux. This is a rosin flux. You can see a little bit of yellow schmoo around the outside of each LED right now. The rosin flux is really sticky, so what it does is it helps hold all of these little chips in place while I go down the line and torch them all. But we have success. Of course, don't want to leave them on there like that too long because they're not on a heat sink. So next step is to do the little board here, and then solder them together and reassemble the whole project. And we should have a working Nichia plus 94 CRI big ugly bumper light. And I will be back with those details later. Alright, so we are beaded, which means I've cleaned off the pads and then applied a little bead of solder on them, just with a large blade tip. Just drag it across. I usually go across at an angle, sometimes I'll go straight across, but it'll trail off with the flux on there and clean up to a nice little bead on top. I do that in lieu of using a solder paste, which I don't care for personally. It's a little too finicky for my likes. Not to mention, if you want a decent paste, you got to keep it at the right temperature, and it only lasts so long. It's just a pain in the ass. Roll of solder will last years. I've already laid out my LEDs on the table here with their cathode marks in the right spot, so I could just place them right on up. Except that guy that I felt like throwing around, apparently. Sure, it's exciting, isn't it? That was sarcasm, in case you didn't get it. Now, when you're working with a rosin flux like this, it's a good idea to keep a bottle of alcohol nearby, because this stuff can get really, really sticky. And once in a while it'll get up inside your tools, and you'll want to clean that out. And alcohol is the most effective means by which to do it. That is also fairly safe and inert for everything else involved. And you wouldn't want to be cleaning any of this stuff with caustic, so. Come here, you little bastard. Another thing to keep handy when you're doing LED reflowing is a very simple toothpick. Use this for minor adjustments on the chip itself, and when it finally does reflow and settle, sometimes you have to tap them down a little bit just to make sure they make contact. Now, when I do this, this is going to be in 2 steps. The first step is just to heat the board. It's called preheating. It'll also help activate some of that flux. We will follow up right behind it with a torch. Small creme brulee torch like this, with a very fine flame on it, very small flame as well. You don't want to push too much heat into the board too quickly, or you'll delam it, or just burn it right up. But you also don't want it to be too cool, because if you sit there cooking on one spot for too long, it'll delam on you as well. Now, some of the LEDs, yes, look crooked at the moment. They will settle onto the pads when the solder flux wets. Or when the solder wets, I should say. They'll actually twist and settle right down on top of the pads. Capillary action and surface tension of the flux pulls them down, or the solder pulls them down. Put a little extra heat right in this area of the board because of that big inductor right there. If you get back in your spot. See the flux bubbling on that guy right there. So zoom in if you can see that or not. Get over there. When the flux starts to bubble, sometimes it can move your chips around a little on you, which is, yes, annoying, but it's a fact of life. Always minor adjustments. Alright. And you can see I've got about blue cone about that far, 2 centimeters out of the nozzle. That's about all the heat you really want to put into these guys.
Oh my God, this is hopeless. We've been searching for hours. We're not going to be dead. No, you better really go. We got your home to eat. Someone's got it, seems like. We're not having it so. Excuse me, did you just say Sonia? That was my dog's name. Excuse me, did you just say Sonia? Yeah, dog. Oh, I thought you might have been talking about this super kinky woman who's always down there trying to learn men with sex. Yeah, but I thought you were talking about a dog. No, that's the Sonia we're looking for. Sonia, we're thinking of there. Where exactly is your sex thing? I'm not sure, but that's because you need to know about the story. Apparently that chick's a complete psycho. Come on, guys, let's go. Man, I hope we don't catch me doing something freaky. It's still weirding out when I walk down there and ask your head.
And sometimes they turn on you.
Hey, Stewie, look, I want to apologize about the other night. And was it? It's time I make this choice. What are you talking about? Talking about love, right? Talking about tough decisions. With me and how it's with you. It's time to take it. Stewie, this is stupid. I'm not doing this. I need your way, or I feel like I'm going to be your host. Hey, my voice isn't that high. It is the... All right, well, listen. Who will it be? Before you answer, all the time we've had. The time we have to beat on the censorship. That winter we lived on the summer. And here's my favorite. A playground where we can fill up with a future together. Yes! Hey, you done that when you're not up this wall? It's you and me forever, Rupert. That is with Oscar, you're taking too hard.
This is it, everything you do. This is not just torture.
I'll come to you. No, come back when you got it. She'll be back soon. I think the guy with the ponytail and a finger tattoo with a princess and let this happen.
Hold that right there.
There, that should do it. Alright, I'll let that cool down for a bit and then we'll do some testing. Alright, after testing, we have full lumens. Yay. Next will be I will clean both PCBs and then it will be reassembly of the whole project and we will have a 42 LED light bar with high HCRI. Hello again, finishing up the last bit of our 42 LED light bar project. All the LEDs have been swapped out. You can see here, these are the stock leads that bridged these two connections. I am beefing them up with some solid core house 14 gauge wire. Set those on. I did come across a fatal flaw when I initially disassembled this. You can see no heatsink paste, no heatsink paste, no heatsink paste, no heatsink paste. Little bit of dabs of it here and there. None of it was really pressed down very well. And the reason for that is, first off, they were cheap and only used 3 screws to hold the whole board down. But then the reflectors themselves had posts here that held them off. So what I did is I ground those down so they're flush completely here. And then I've also got some gaskets. They're going to go around all the LEDs. And that way there's equal pressure pushing down over every die across the whole panel to hold it down to the heatsink, along with some ceramic dew. We will be back when that is completed. Alright, everything's wired up. Let's go for a little test run right quick. I'm just using a 9-volt battery just to get the LEDs to light. Don't want to run them full power. They seem to be chooching right along. Cool deal. Alright, she's all back assembled. And here we go. I think that works. And the glow dots. On to the next project.